Hello and Merry Christmas. Welcome into the PHNX Cardinals post-game show brought to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Johnny Venerable, the GM, Saul Bookman. We've got Bo Brock live at State Farm Stadium in just a little bit. But Saul, man, that one, it was a gut punch, man. It was a game in which the Arizona Cardinals, we thought were going to get blown out. And then as people said in the chat, then they were competitive all game, and then they blew it, only like Kliff Kingsbury and company have been known to do. Your initial thoughts and takeaways from this kind of heartbreaker on Christmas Day?
It was a heartbreaker, but I mean, let's be honest. When the Cardinals went up by 10, I was like, Tom's coming right back. There's just no way. And sure enough, it took 5-6 plays at the most, and they had already put 7 back on the board. And then you could tell like the screws started to tighten a little bit. I thought the Cardinals were actually going to be able to pull out another field goal on that drive.
Yeah.
But it stalled yet again, and Tom Brady showed you why he's Tom Brady.
I think the play of the game for me, of course, was the option to pitch it out to Keontae Ingram, 3rd and 1. You're almost within field goal range already to basically put the game away because you convert there and you had been running it well. I mean, Tampa was only going to be able to do so much, assuming that you could get another Matt Prater field goal. James Conner was gutting them up the middle, Tampa, late in the fourth quarter. And what did Kliff Kingsbury opt to do? Instead of going with James Conner up the middle on 3rd and 1, he got cute. Not only did he run Keontae, it's not that I have a problem with Keontae, the pitch out that, by the way, had he not fumbled, was going to get snuffed out. That's just when you want to wrap your arms around Kliff Kingsbury and you want to say this team is playing hard for him, then he does something like that, and it's just like, oh my goodness, I can't defend that. That was the game for me.
Yeah, because then the Bucs were able to get another 3 on the board to send it in overtime.
Yeah.
Again, I thought it in the moment too. Like, just again, call a timeout, go straight up, dive right over the center, or between the center and the guard, or guard and tackle. I don't care, and go for it with your strongest inside runner. Mm-hmm. Why do we always have to pull out some fancy shit when it's just unnecessary?
Yeah, it was frustrating because, again, defense played, I think, the best game of the season. I know Tom Brady isn't himself. I mean, he looks like he's about ready to retire after this game. And the Bucs offense isn't a juggernaut, but they've got big-time players, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans and company, and, of course, the GOAT. And I thought, the running backs were pretty competent tonight. And you've got Marco Wilson playing great. And I thought Zaven Collins, Isaiah Simmons played well. And, of course, JJ Wott. It's disappointing for the defense. Picking spreads, thank you so much. $4.99 super chat. Least we're still in the Cardinals Carter Anderson sweepstakes. Yep, draft implications. We're going to get to that. Hopefully the Sean Payton, the Arizona rumors are true because we need him now more than ever. I'll play spin zone here. I do think it's a good sign for any GM, head coach that may be looking at this team and saying, there's some young pieces here, and they didn't quit on Christmas Day against Tom Brady when they had nothing to play for. Saul, I tweeted it out. Of course, it's very on brand for the Cardinals to play their best primetime game in recent memory when they had literally nothing to play for.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That is very on brand. Very on brand. The best game of the season so far for them on primetime. And sure enough, this is where they fall short. I don't think Tampa was all that great anyway. They came in. Listen, they've been on the struggle bus as well. They've been able to pull some games out, but there's been a couple miracles that just kind of went their way, like the game against the Saints a little while back. Like, it's just, there's some fluky stuff, but it's Tom Brady. And if you give him an opportunity, he's going to take advantage of you. And I thought the Cardinals played as great on defense as they possibly could have, considering the guys that they have. Yeah, and that's just it. And I agree with you in terms of the young talent across the roster. There are definitely some pieces there, so it's got to encourage you. You're right. It's got to encourage you if you're a possible head coaching candidate or a GM looking to come over. You don't necessarily have to completely overhaul, but you got to get some key guys in some key places to shore up things and make things a little bit more consistent.
Trace McSorley played about as well as you could ask a third string borderline NFL quarterback to play. 24-45. Yes, he had the one interception, but he made that nice throw to Hollywood Brown in overtime. I thought he played within the parameters of the offense and did some good things. I mean, to be honest with you, James Conner, 15 for 79. Why did James Conner only have 15 touches on the ground when he's averaging 5.3 yards per carry and they can't stop him? I mean, the only time this offense, stop me if you've heard this before, stopped themselves was screens and end arounds. I mean, to me, it's like the possession in overtime after they made the throw, McSorley made the throw to Hollywood. That next possession, Kliff tries, very first play, an end around to Hollywood Brown or a screen. I can't remember. And it gets 1 yard and it sets them up for failure. The game was there to be won. And I think this is, and I know people in the chat, we're going to talk about it. How does this affect Kliff Kingsbury? I don't think this was a well-managed game from Kliff. I think that it's a good sign for Kliff that the players didn't quit on him. I mean, like, I'm not saying Denver quit on Nathaniel Hackett today, but that looks like a team ready to be done with the season. Like, they're stiff-arming the rest of their game, and they want no part of competing. The Cardinals wanted to compete today, so kudos for them. We'll applaud you for that. And I know a lot of people would say, well, they're professionals. They have to play hard. That's bullshit. We see guys quit all the time. But Kliff was not good in the second half. He didn't run nearly enough clock. He left way too much time, Saul, as you mentioned, for Tom Brady. And his play calling with Trace McSorley, when it's tailored for your back to have a big game, if your quarterback is limited and you're averaging 4.5 yards per carry and you're not pounding your running back, your prime running back you gave a contract to, I can't defend that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it through the last 4 years, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Kliff Kingsbury is. He doesn't trust the consistency of his own system, which is kind of sad. You know, I mean, James Conner, again, like, we're doing these Trace McSorley like QB runs for like 2-3 yards a pop, maybe.
When you have no quarterbacks, by the way, you can't get somebody else hurt.
I'm like, what are we doing? Like, who's the 4-string backup? You know what I mean? Like, is D-Hop going to go out there and say, oh, by the way, not only can I also play quarterback because I did that in high school, but I also can play quarterback because I did that in middle school. So let me get back there. Like, I just don't get it. I don't understand this coach at all. I really don't. And I think most of the fan base would echo those sentiments. Like, what are you doing? You're getting in your own way unnecessarily. So, yeah.
Because I think tonight would have been a great night if you're on the Kliff bandwagon, and I know it's few and far between, but if you're Kliff Kingsbury, it's like, my players showed up for me tonight. And I'm sure on Hard Knocks, can't wait for Hard Knocks this Wednesday, we'll have a post-game show, that people are going to be emotional after this game because they played their ass off for them. And then your coach really just kind of showed you that these are my inefficiencies. They're not getting better. Edwin had a great point that I want to pivot to here about Greg Dortch. Dortch is the real deal. It's a fireable offense that Kliff has forced him to ride the bench all year. Greg Dortch, 11 targets, 10 receptions, almost 100 yards, 98 yards against Todd Bowles on Christmas Day. It's just like, and they wouldn't
He's not good enough. He's not good enough to play in the first 8 games of the season when things really matter. Only when things have been put away.
Trotting out AJ Green's corpse for how long?
Greg Dortch is clearly not the answer to anything we can do offensively. Obviously, I say that sarcastically because, listen, we've been saying since preseason, Greg Dortch should have a much more consistent role on this offense. But again, Kliff Kingsbury, for whatever reason, I can't figure it out. And I think if you can't figure out a coach, I can only imagine what the players think offensively and as a whole in terms of the value that he brings to the table. Like, we talk about consistency and how us as a fan base can't really figure out what he's going to do from play to play, but the defense can, based on the formations that he's putting in, the types of signals or whatever that's going on. But his players, like, where are the players finding the consistency? And week in and week out, we see the same thing on the field. False starts, inopportune formation snaps that are wrong, like just a bunch of different shit. And it leads to this record, first of all, and then also down the stretch, how things just kind of fall apart for you time after time after time again.
The Arizona Cardinals are 4-16 in their last 20 games. I'm sorry, what? 4-16 in their last 20 games. I wanted to see a win tonight. I know a lot of people were rooting for a loss. I'm sorry. Like, this would have been a fun Christmas gift. It was entertaining. The team was, I mean, I watched that with my 7-year-old son, and we had a great time. I'm like, this is what good football looks like. And then it wasn't good football. And I'm like, oh, this is also what Cardinal football has. We've all come to know what it looks like. Some other standouts from the game. again, defensively, Isaiah Simmons, I thought was all over the field tonight, 11 tackles. I laughed at the graphic they put up that he's been in the slot 45% of the time, which was a joke. Just let him be, a thumper. Let him be, a predator in the front seven and let him go to work. I thought he was fantastic. And then, we've got some people making comments about it now, I guess, via Cam Cox, JJ Wott tearing up, leaving the field. So with just, I guess, assumption, and probably correct one, that this is his last game at State Farm Stadium, which I had not put two and two together because, again, I mean, Michael Bidwell's liable to do anything, but I think he's gone.
Listen, I know what everybody's talking about in terms of, like, could this be his last game with the Cardinals?
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think that he would tear up about that. I have more of an inclination that he would probably tear up because maybe he's coming to the end.
Because and that would only
listen,
the heart issue.
With the heart issue, that seems to be okay now, obviously. Otherwise, he wouldn't be playing. He's got a kid. He seems like he's in a different place in his life. And usually you are once you have a kid and a family and you want to be around a little bit more and all this other stuff. I wonder if that's that, man.
Be unfortunate because, like, he can go and play for a contender tomorrow and be one of their best players on defense. He is everything. And that's the unfortunate part. We've talked about it ad nauseum here on PHNX Cardinals. You would have signed up tenfold if you would have known this is the JJ Watt you're getting this year. After all the missed time last year and the questions about a salary, he has showed up this year, carried water for this franchise, and kicked ass amongst a quarterback getting hurt and a head coach and a GM potentially on their way out. He has been the beacon for this franchise, the adult in the room, so to speak. So it's not just on the field, but it's off the field as well. So if that is his last game at home, it's unfortunate. I hope he continues playing because, again, he's an ass kicker. I mean, what he did up front the last 2 weeks against Denver and then today, I mean, they had Tom Brady looking sideways more often than not. And it really, they ran out of gas, and that's the theme of the season. The offense didn't do enough because right now the offense is limited because they're missing players. And then the defense ran out of gas. I mean, nobody expected them to hold Tom Brady and company to, 15 points would have been the winning formula today. That's not realistic. And, moral victories don't come this late in the year for a team that was supposed to make the playoffs. But for me, it's like this was a quality performance by a lot of Cardinals that are playing for jobs next year.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just I do think that, like, the defense balled their ass off. But again, we're starting to see reasons why certain guys are not high-level guys, right? So let's talk about Kliff Kingsbury. We've already expanded on Kliff Kingsbury. But now Vance Joseph. Chris Collinsworth made a phenomenal observation on the drive where the Bucs scored a touchdown, talking about how their defense had changed and the defensive backs were sagging off 10 yards. And they were giving up those little dink-dunk, for 10, 15-yard throwouts.
Yeah.
Hello, it's Tom fucking Brady, guy. You're not playing against fucking Tom Tupa. So you can't let him take advantage of that because he's the best fucking quarterback of all time, Vance Joseph. You cannot be passive in that moment. And that's
it's like against the Chargers, against Justin Herbert, when they were playing soft zone the whole game and they picked him apart. It's too predictable.
If you're afraid to lose, you're doomed to. You just are. And that's exactly what happened. Again, a reason why Vance Joseph is not a head coach right now in this league. I know he's had his moments with these teams where they ball their ass off and they dominate. But then he's at equally as many moments where things just fall apart for him, or he's making the wrong call at the wrong time. And more importantly, the lack of wanting to play more talented players based on experience. I mean, it's clear right now that the 2 third-rounders that we picked
up, they're good. They're good players.
They're solid players. Why the fuck haven't they been on the field, as much in the first 8 games as they have been the last 4 or 5? Like, it blows my mind. And I'm not even talking about fundamental things that they might have picked up from JJ Wott and all this. I'm talking about legit physical talent.
Yeah. Off the edge, length, size, explosiveness. I love Marcus Golden. He looks cooked right now. Dennis Gardeck should not play at all in the base defense, ever. Majay Sanders is 6'5". As much as I like to dog on Cincinnati's program last year, Saul Bookman knows the history with that. Like, they were a fucking Final Four team, and he was their best defensive player. And he's been very good every time he stepped on the field. And Cam Thomas is forcing holding penalties. He's giving Tristan Wirfs the business over there. That to me will always be Vance's undoing. I will defend Vance Joseph to hell or high water. I think he should be a defensive coordinator. Should, he get fired at the end of the year, go get another job somewhere. His inability to take a high draft pick the same year and get them starting experience as a rookie, or even into year 2 in some cases, in Isaiah Simmons, Byron Murphy's case, that's his biggest downfall. I don't want to see journeyman practice squad players who may know your system better play over these young guys. That to me, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that to me is the biggest critique I have of Vance. And then, and people in the comments saying their defense is 32nd in the NFL and giving up points.
I was about to say, everybody, flames on Cincinnati until they need Cincinnati in their argument. So, I mean, again, we could go on and on about this. These are nothing new about these issues, right? The same things that kind of plagued Vance Joseph as well in Denver. I mean, if you talk to anybody from DMVR and the experience that they had with Vance Joseph as their head coach, it was like the same shit we're talking about now, the lack of developing players. And again, when you have a lack of development on the defensive and offensive side of the ball, think about it. What guys, Greg Dortch, I don't even know if I want to make him the exception, because Greg Dortch basically had to commit a crime just to get on the goddamn field. Like, I don't know who he had to, murder, but Jesus, it feels like it takes something drastic for him to be able to get some run. So I can't really go ahead.
No, 120 all-purpose yards, 98 yards receiving, and 25 yards rushing. 25 yards rushing, 8.3 yards per carry. And it's not like smoke and mirrors, Kyle Shanahan scheming some stuff up. People are wide open. Like, guys breaking tackles. That's always been my biggest critique. He's a football player. The Cardinals have too many guys who, it's that age-old saying, it look like Tarzan, play like Jane. Like, I'm not going to say that. But they got guys who are high draft picks, Rondale Moore, Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler and company, that aren't nearly the football player that Greg Dortch is at the pro level. So you'd love to see that. He was almost Saul Bookman, our DraftKings king of the game. And the only reason I didn't give it to him is because I had to give it to somebody on the defensive side. Marco Wilson picked on Tom Brady tonight. He's our DraftKings king of the game. Hot damn Marco Wilson. Here's the deal. Everybody who likes to dog on Marco Wilson like he was a first-round pick and they have unrealistic expectations, bullshit. 4th-round pick out of Florida, balling tonight on national TV, quote-unquote, Sunday Night Football. Fantastic. I love what I saw from Marco Wilson. I love what I see from DraftKings, by the way. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use that promo code PHNX. Some of you were probably sweating this. If this is the first time you've used our friends at DraftKings, first of all, welcome. You could have placed, and you can continue to place, a $5 bet on any NFL team to win their game. Get $150 in free bets if they do. If this was your first and you dabbled on Tampa, congrats to you. If you dabbled on the Cardinals, I appreciate the support of our local team here in the Valley. But regardless, only at DraftKings Sportsbook with the promo code PHNX can you get this deal, $150 in free bets. Promo code PHNX, minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See those show notes for details. All right, Saul Bookman, let's talk about what everyone wants to talk about. Had Kliff Kingsbury won this game, do you think he would have had a better chance to keep his job than otherwise? And do you think, we're going to ask Bo this, do you think with how hard the team played, that helps him? Or does the fact that they're, 1-11 in their last 12 home games really kind of make Michael Bidwell say, no, I'm not getting fooled by this jokester again?
No, I mean, you have to account for the total picture. And even in that story, when it was said that Kliff Kingsbury believes that he doesn't have the resources to succeed, if you're the owner and you hear that, it's basically saying that Keim and you didn't do your job to give him the things that he needed to succeed, which is complete bullshit. I mean, I would argue that Kliff Kingsbury's gotten more extrapolating or extraneous tools than any other coach in the NFL in the last 5 years, and considering what's been put together for him. So it's not for a lack of effort or trying by the executive staff. It's up to him. And I think I think no matter what, at the end of the season, Michael Bill will make the move. I really do. How can you keep Kliff Kingsbury and don't have a fan base that's just rabid to get rid of him so bad?
The apathy that would come from this fan base. And we support people going to the game. I don't want you to sell your tickets. We hate seeing that. We want the Valley and the Cardinals to be great. But with what this would look like, having to support, and this could still happen, so we'll see what takes place. But having to support a head coach that, number one, is going to the media, because let's make no mistake, we love Josh Weifus, friend of the program, came on Friday's show. If you haven't seen that, check that out. Basically, like, he had a source close to Kliff Kingsbury that, according to Saul, what he just said, it's basically Kliff saying, you guys haven't done enough for me. And if I'm Michael Bidwell, I'm saying, motherfucker, what? Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, James Conner, Zach Ertz, Trey McBride. You got Justin Pugh, Rodney Hudson, free agent contracts. You got all these resources. Most people feel like the Cardinals are one of the most talented teams to be where they are. Look at the other teams that you're down there with in the muck. With all due respect to our friends and family at CHGO, the Bears are terrible. The roster's awful. The Houston Texans are a complete gut job. And we're going to talk about the draft standings later, you're a game away from those teams. So, to me, Michael needs to just step outside and just say, this guy does not respect the opportunity that I gave him, maybe foolishly. Losing record at Texas Tech. I'm giving you this opportunity, and you come here and you blast me through anonymous sources on ESPN. Man, that to me, I don't know how you function in the building. We already know that the Keim, Bidwell, Kingsbury relationship is scarred, and now Kliff and Kyler don't like each other. Then just make a move. Make a move, because it's not only bad on the field, it's bad off the field.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, Johnny. I don't know what he's going to do. I've sat here and thought, 95 different ways of how this could go, and every single path to me leads to Kliff Kingsbury being removed as head coach of this football team. It's not something we clamor for people to get fired, but that's the nature of this business. If you don't produce, then you got to go. And I would say that this team is wildly underperformed in its last 24 games. That's 4-20 record speaks for itself. You don't need to be a genius to see that. They had a phenomenal start to last season. That was the best stretch of football during the Kingsbury era. And they went 6-0, and they should have been 7-0 after that game against the Packers. Since that point, they have been one of the worst teams in football, if not the worst team in football. You can't have such a drastic turn in just a calendar year like that. You just can't. No. Hell, if we were in a normal corporate environment, and I was like, oh, by the way, blah, 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 and our stock dropped significantly, guess what? Heads got to roll. Yeah. That's just how that goes. And Kliff Kingsbury has got to be that dude. He just does.
It makes me sad to talk about how bad the team has been, specifically at home. It makes me sad that the Valley hasn't had someplace to go and congregate and have a good time and watch good product. But I have something that hopefully will cheer everybody up, and it's via PHNX and our friends at Four Peaks. I'm talking about the PHNX Tea Party presented by Four Peaks. Sorry. God bless you.
Sorry.
Dobson Ranch Golf Course. How about this party, Mr. Saul Bookman? What can you tell us? Because I look at this and I say, hot damn, foursomes at 160? That's a steal of a deal.
Yeah, so what it's going to be is, I'm sorry, my allergies are really kicking up. So what it's going to be is, it's going to be a group of us that are going to be out there. There's 41 bays. You can rent out a bay for the night, take a foursome, and you can play 18 different courses, from TPC Sawgrass to Pebble Beach, whatever. And we're going to compete all night. It's 4.5 hours of just pure fun. We'll have longest drive challenges. We have a putt-putt challenge, a three-point shootout, because they have a basketball hoop there. Don't ask me why. And all your favorite vendors from the PHNX family, such as OGs and Four Peaks, will be out there selling some tasty beverages and edibles, obviously. And then we'll have Burrito Express and stuff like that out there as well. So it's going to be a great time. Plus, there's a Suns watch party all at the same time. We're going to watch Timberwolves against the Suns, and then we're going to do a pre- and post-game shows out there. So we're going to go out there and swing it and have fun and eat a bunch of stuff, drink a bunch of stuff, and kick it with everybody that comes.
One more time, Mr. Bookman. What day is that going down?
January 13th, baby.
January
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th, which could be a celebratory day for a lot of people because I'm sorry, Monday, January 9th, Black Monday in the NFL. So, I mean, that might be a big party week for a lot of people here in the Valley. You got a new maybe GM, head coach, come out to Dobson Ranch, presented by Four Peaks again. Whole driving range is getting rented out. Beer samples, swag. Check out the link in the description. Reserve your spot now because they're going fast. And again, our diehards, check out the Discord for your special link. You can save up to 20% on this fantastic event. It's the biggest event we've ever done. I'm so excited for it. I'm excited for you guys to check it out. And again, talking about the Arizona Cardinals, where this puts them in the draft landscape. Again, the L today, they're back in the top 4, Saul Bookman. And you couple that with the fact that Sean McVay and company, they got a dub today against the hapless Denver Broncos. Cardinals are now in last place in the NFC West, which means season ended today, they would get a 4th place schedule. That's enticing for a potential head coach. Maybe, I don't know, Sean Payton would see that. And I know a lot of people are questioning, why are the Arizona Cardinals behind Denver? They lost to Denver. Well, it's all about the strength of schedule. Denver played a little bit of a cupcake schedule comparison to Arizona, 488. So they have the tiebreaker. Unfortunately, it's not for win-loss head-to-head. Cardinals at strength of schedule at 520. But man, oh man, look at the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears get one more dub. Cardinals lose these last 2. Cardinals now vaunt themselves into the top 3. So right now we're looking at this record. Houston, number 1. Chicago, number 2. Denver, which belongs, of course, to Seattle because of the Russell Wilson trade. Cardinals, number 4. Indianapolis, even if they were to beat the Chargers, lose to the Chargers tomorrow, they still will not leapfrog the Cardinals because of their tie. Cardinals right now, Saul Bookman, some would say sitting pretty with a top 4 pick. What are your assessments of this heading into these final 2 games?
Who do we have left? We have Atlanta. And then
at Atlanta, at San Francisco. And again, before anybody's like, the Atlanta Falcons are terrible, I think, this is not me hoping or wishing or praying, it's going to be very hard for the Cardinals after this big emotional loss to get on the road and go to the East Coast and have the wherewithal to play Atlanta, knowing that with this team, everything is emotional. They're always in the press for the wrong reasons. I could be wrong. They could go play the same inspired football they played tonight for Kliff Kingsbury. I think you're asking a lot for this team, even against Desmond Ridder, to go to Atlanta and beat the Falcons in their building next weekend.
No, I agree. Plus, the Falcons have something to play for.
They do.
But listen, Johnny, this is also in the Cardinals' DNA, is to absolutely sacrifice the top 5 pick because you want to win some fluky game at the end of the season for no reason. Watch them go to San Francisco and beat San Francisco. Like, they'll lose to Atlanta, then they'll go to San Francisco
against their 2s,
and they will lose against San Francisco. You can almost book it. So,
well, here's my concern. Like, I care about the draft pick. Don't get me wrong, sure. Sean. Can we see that draft group in one more time? My concern is meaningless wins at the end of the year, saving Kliff Kingsbury's job. Yeah. I do think had they won tonight, Saul, and maybe won one of these last 2, you've got, I don't know, a little bit of momentum, false momentum if you're Michael Bidwell. My concern is you win one of these games and Michael Bidwell says, look, the team didn't quit. The draft pick, it's important, but the Cardinals have Kyler Murray. They're presumably not going to take a quarterback. To me, as long as you get the new tandem of a head coach and GM, and you're going to be in the top 10 anyway, it's not a huge difference for me. I know I love Will Anderson and Jalen Carter as much as anybody else. I want them on our team. Please, God, make it happen. But it feels like to get to the draft, I have to get through the next 2 weeks. And in the next 2 weeks, I need to see who's going to be running this team, or at least knowing who's not going to be running this team in the form of Keim and Kliff Kingsbury. If I have assurance, if somebody gave me assurance on that today, I would be able to watch these last 2 games with a much more clear mindset. Like, you look at a team, I don't know, like the Denver Broncos, for instance, that are definitely going to fire Nathaniel Hackett, poor guy. And because they're trapped with Russell Wilson, they have to make it work with somebody else. A team like Indianapolis that knows their head coach is not on their roster. They can play and look at these games kind of free and easy. Like, Kliff is around until he's not. And until we get that text message or the notification or a DM from somebody in the know saying he's out, then I'm inclined to just see. Listen, Josh Weinfuss on our show Friday, Saul said he thinks Kliff is back. Like not very slim chance, very slim margin over him being fired is he gets to stay. But I don't know. I don't know how, if you're Michael Bidwell, there's just so much losing at home. How do you get your fan base excited about that? So to me, that means much more than the draft status.
Yeah, I listen. I don't feel like you can avoid any of this. I just feel like you need an organizational overhaul. You do, and I'm sorry. Like, if you replace the GM, that means the head coach is going to be gone.
Yeah,
it's very rare that you replace
even with Adrian Wilson and Quentin Harris. You would say they will want their own guy.
Yeah,
okay.
Because every GM. One of the things I was told when I first got into college athletics was that every athletic director makes his money off of the hires that he makes. It's not really anything else. You hire great coaches, guess what? The team's successful, boosters donate money, yada, yada, yada. Well, it's the same thing with GMs. GMs are the athletic directors of the professional world, and every single GM wants to be able to control their own destiny by hiring the people that they want to hire. If you replace Steve Keim, and you even go with A-Dub ain't gonna want to keep Kliff. Ain't gonna happen unless it's a mandate from Michael Bidwell. But I don't think Michael Bidwell operates in that fashion. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to attract high level coaches and GMs.
He has already reportedly been meeting with potential minority candidates for the general manager position at that conference. He is, of course, has the interim, Quentin Harris and Adrian Wilson, who were sitting in the booth with him tonight. Who knows what that means or not in the grand scheme of things. I'm hopeful that Michael. Go ahead.
I love A-Dub. I don't know enough about A-Dub's GM skills in terms of talent evaluation. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not in those rooms, so we have no idea. Like, A-Dub's been all over this one kid from whatever, South Dakota State, and Steve Keim ultimately was like, nah, I like this kid from Massachusetts. Let's take this white out. You know what I mean? So that's it. Andy Isabella reference. And so it's just too hard to tell. But what I do love is if Adrian Wilson, and I believe this to be true, hard worker, like that's in his DNA, tireless work ethic, wants to learn, has been thirsty to learn. And I remember the conversations with Steve Keim back in the day when he would talk about that relationship because they're both North Carolina State guys and whatnot. So I would believe that Adrian Wilson has the work ethic to be a GM. I just don't know about his ability to evaluate talent, and one doesn't necessarily lead to the other.
And I think this comment right here, A-Dub with no experience is still better than Keim. And that's what we've come to, is like anybody but Keim. And then we're going to work our way up to hopefully better expectations. We're waiting on Bo Brock here. He's going to join us here in a second.
But again, we're not necessarily talking about just talent evaluation, right? Talent acquisition. And this is the part where I do believe Steve Keim is one of the elite at. Yeah. Yes. Like being able to convince D-Hop to not only to be able to negotiate his own contract, because D-Hop doesn't have an agent, remember? And to be able to get through that without hurting D-Hop's feelings, understanding what's on the table, and getting them for what he believes is a good price. And I would argue that it is a good price. You've had D-Hop now, you can cut him, and you'd save yourself about $35 million, I think. So go ahead.
Well, here's my problem with the A-Dub situation and Quentin Harris. And this is not an indictment on them as people and professionals. The Cardinals are not a winning franchise. So their first inclination should not be promote from within. Like they're not close right now. You have 4 wins on the season. You're last in your division. So unless you feel like, to Saul's point, if Adrian Wilson is pounding his table like Keim did once upon a time for Adrian Peterson, they took Levi Brown. Unless that's happening on the reg with Keim and A-Dub and Quentin Harris, like I'm sorry, go pluck good GMs and executives from teams that know what the fuck they're doing. Like that should be your MO. Like I love, this franchise. They haven't hired an external GM in 3 decades. I mean, that to me is the biggest crux. We've got Bo Brock live from State Farm Stadium. He just got done listening to Kliff Kingsbury. Bo in his Christmas flannel tee. What is the good word, my man? How was Kliff Kingsbury? Because Here's what I told Saul. Team didn't quit on them tonight, but his game management, I do feel like, cost the team the game.
Yeah, I mean, team was up 16-6, under 10 minutes to play in the fourth quarter. And then, the 3rd and 1 call, I don't even know what to tell you about that. That was a play that he had to speak for in the post-game press conference. 4 minutes left. You have James Conner, who's rolling. He's over 100 total yards in offense for this Arizona Cardinals team. And then they put Keontae Ingram in a position to catch a pitch from Trace McSorley on 3rd and 1, and it turns into a fumble that puts Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that were struggling all game, in prime position to tie it. They do. Kliff said, hey, that was something they were trying to set up. They liked their look there, and that's what they were going for, and it eventually cost them. I mean, they blew a 10-point lead at the end of the game.
Frustrating. Go ahead, Saul.
Bo, watching this game from the perspective of a third-string quarterback in Trace McSorley,
right.
Obviously you could see the inexperience. You could see that he just doesn't have the talent to be able to compete at a very high level, a little bit of inaccuracies. But overall, I didn't think he was awful. How would you assess his play today?
I mean, he was missing DeAndre Hopkins pretty well all game. I mean, 10 targets, and he came up with 1 catch. And we know DeAndre Hopkins' ability that when the ball goes up and it's within his general vicinity, he's going to come down with the ball. He had about 7 balls that were just not catchable tonight. It cost a lot of fantasy owners their game in the semifinals this week, and our hearts go out to them. But as far as, Trace McSorley, he just doesn't have the accuracy to compete. He's a guy that, I think nobody really envisioned him at Penn State, even though he won a bunch of games there for the Nittany Lions, being somebody that was going to win football games at this level. And, credit to the offensive line for playing well this week. But, Trace, there was at one point he missed on 6 straight passes in the first half. It was just not good enough. But, look, I mean, for him to get his first start, for this team to lead by 10 points, like a tip of the cap for his competitiveness, but that's about as far as it goes.
Bo, we got reports out of State Farm Stadium, JJ Wott, emotional after this game. I don't know if you had an opportunity to speak to the press or if you had a chance to bump into old number 99, but speculation abound, not only if this is his last game with the Cardinals, but if this is his last home game, period. What do you make of JJ's performance and basically the spirited performance of the defense that did everything they could to win this game?
Yeah, I mean, that was something that Kliff could talk to positively in the post-game press conference, to say, how tremendous JJ had been. He had a couple tackles for a loss today. He was putting the pressure on Brady. It seemed like all game long. Another solid first half for Watt. And anytime the defense was making a big play on 3rd down, it seems like 99 was involved. We usually don't see him post-game after the games. He's usually in and out. Uses Kliff's press availability time to get dressed and get out of there. We saw him pre-game hanging out with the wife in the sun, his newborn son on the sidelines before the game. So I don't know, maybe it was just the holidays that were getting the best of him, or it was just another loss. It was just another game that they had within their grasp that they let go. And this Arizona Cardinals team now drops to 4-11, the most losses under Kliff Kingsbury since he started here, which is crazy because, his first season, that roster was not nearly as talented despite all the injuries. He goes 5-10-1. Now he's 4-11 in his 4th season.
It's the obligatory question that we have to ask every single person that ever comes onto this show, as you know, Bo. But I'm going to ask you after this game: does Kliff Kingsbury survive the season?
No, I don't think so. I think it's pretty much they've got to move on. You've got Sean Payton building all-star coaching staffs, and who's going to be in a prime position to contend for his services. And you got a guy who just finished up a 1-7 performance at State Farm Stadium. Now people can say, hey, they won it at home, and they'll call that neutral field game in Mexico City a home game. But they went 1-7 in front of their hometown fans. That's not getting it done. Was it, Johnny, now 5-15 over their last 20? Not competing.
No, not competing. We got more questions for Bo. I want to remind everybody right now, today is the last day for the holiday clearance event that's happening at More Furniture, morefurniture.com. Check it out right now. You can save up to 50% off on the premium furniture that you can't find anywhere else. It is littered throughout our PHNX studios. It's much better than this off-brand chair I'm sitting in right now at my place. I wish I had some more furniture. I'm going to get on the website right after we're done. Again, morefurniture.com. It's what you want to buy for your home, and it's the premium items that aren't at a premium price. Get in on the action with More Furniture. And I want to, of course, Underdog Fantasy. Listen, Saul Bookman's in the semifinals of our year-long fantasy league. We're not going to talk about how Bo and I finished in year-long fantasy.
If it makes you feel any better, D-Hop only got me one catch tonight.
Oh,
and
man.
so I am up.
You were one of those guys.
I'm up by 0.05 points right now. I do have Mike Williams and a linebacker from Indy. He still has running back from Indy that got traded from Buffalo. I'm forgetting his name.
Yeah, Zach Moss.
Yeah.
So you're sweating it out.
Oh, yeah. It's a tie game.
He's sweating it out year-long fantasy. We're living it up daily fantasy because, again, you pick up the pieces, you move on to the next day, and you do it with Underdog Fantasy. Draft your team up against 5 of your friends. The highest scoring squad gets that cold, hard cash for the evening. Hey, if you're pivoting off the NBA, or excuse me, the NFL, it's not your deal. You haven't had good luck. Go to the NBA. Draft 6 NBA players, no positional limits. That's it. Will Devin Booker hit the higher end points? Will Ben Simmons hit the lower end points? You know he will. It's easy to get started. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com, download the app, sign up with promo code, you guessed it, PHNX. Underdog Fantasy is going to match your first deposit up to $100. It's better than any fantasy app you've used. It's super simple. Again, UnderdogFantasy.com, Underdog Fantasy app, PHNX. Get in on the action today as we break down the game. Again with Bo, Brock, and Bo. I think one of the biggest indictments of Kliff Kingsbury's season, and it feels like a sub-bullet because there's so many, but the refusal to consistently give somebody like Greg Dortch playing time. And he goes out on Christmas Day, 120 total yards of offense against Todd Bowles, and looks like every bit the player that you hoped Rondale Moore, Andy Isabella would be. And we're sitting here, and it's like we're week 15, and we're like, what are we doing? I think, to me, and that was all over and littered on the Twitter streets tonight, but man, that is a huge indictment of talent evaluation from Kliff.
Yeah, we'll tweet out Kliff's answer to the question of why has it been so hit and miss as far as playing time for Greg Dortch. I mean, going into this game the last 2 weeks, he played 10 offensive snaps combined, 10. And this is a guy who had 10 catches on 11 targets tonight. I mean, in every game that you can think that you remember Greg Dortch getting significant offensive snaps, even like half of the offensive snaps, he was making an impact, just like he did tonight. And Kliff said that it was a process. It's like every time we saw this guy go out, he was a dog. He was making plays for this team. Like, what's the process? I mean, if that's the process, abandon it at this point. Play your best players. Doesn't matter where you're drafted. Doesn't matter how big your signing bonus was or what you're making on a yearly basis. And, Greg Dortch, 10 catches for 98 yards. He had a couple carries too so over 120 yards from scrimmage. I mean, that's a guy that's making an impact on the game. I mean, we went through the entire first half where outside of the trick play, 2 guys had caught passes. It was Greg Dortch and it was James Conner. And Dortch, no matter who, he's played now with 3 quarterbacks this season, and he's made an impact with each and every one. Kyler Murray, Colt McCoy, and now Trace McSorley. It doesn't matter who's throwing it. It doesn't matter what the offensive scheme is. It doesn't matter what defense is playing him, what big name corners on him, what safeties on him. Doesn't matter. He makes plays. It's just a shame. And just to chalk it up, it's part of the process. I mean, that's part of the problem.
I've already gone off about Greg Dortch. I've already gone off about how.
I'm sorry about D-Hop, man. That sucks.
It is what it is, man. I'm still living. I'm all right. But again, we can go back and forth. Like, listen. Kliff Kingsbury's process has been flawed since he's been here. It just has. There's just so many instances where he should be doing X, but he does Z instead. Tonight, you can look at 2 right off the bat in terms of why haven't you played Greg Dortch even more, and why the fuck did you go with the flip on 3rd and 1? Like, there's just so many things that you just don't understand where they're coming from, and I alluded to this a little earlier, so I won't digress.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating to watch a team, Bo.
I had
find a way to lose.
Yeah. it was definitely a new way. And, that's what bad teams do. I mean, they find new ways to lose, and they've certainly done that several times this season. When I was getting ready to come up and join you guys, I saw Mike Golick, who spent so many years in the radio booth, hosting a morning show. He played in the NFL, and he was saying, I overheard him talking to his son, Junior, on the way out. He says, "What the hell was that 31 play?" He said, "What the hell was that?" That was what he was saying going to the elevator. It's just like people are just flabbergasted by decisions down the stretch by this team. It's just like it's not just us. It's not just people who are watching this team on a daily basis, weekly basis. It's people even just getting a check of it on the periphery or getting a glimpse of it on a primetime game. Cardinals now fall to 1-3 on primetime.
That's the Kliff Kingsbury experience, is what you should have said to him.
Yeah.
Well, I do have to ask, because the defense played a spirited game. Marco Wilson, I thought, best game maybe as a pro, 2 picks off of Tom Brady. There are some building blocks on this team, and this is what I was discussing with Saul. This is not a bare cupboard instance, maybe like 2013, maybe like 2011, 2018, you're starting over with a new quarterback. There's talent on this roster, and I think that's the biggest point of frustration with a lot of Cardinal fans is, yeah, you've got better skill players than most teams that you play. You just don't utilize them correctly. And you've got defenders that are flying around the ball. Isaiah Simmons, Marco Wilson. I thought Buddha had a good game. And they don't, right now, it's not, the talent isn't evolving to wins, but I would say that's got to be pretty attractive for the next GM head coaching combination for this franchise, assuming that they do make a move, that the cupboard is not bare.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's more, there's more talent in this roster than 2018, because in 2018, you had Patrick Peterson, who wanted out. He requested a trade. You had Larry Fitzgerald, who was in his late 30s, and you didn't have much more than that. Buda Baker, who was an up-and-comer. Now you have, like, as you mentioned, Marco Wilson just picked off the GOAT twice, and I know Tom Brady's a shell of himself, but he made some good plays. Multi-pick game, that's tough to do at the NFL level. He left, of course, he wasn't in that final series against Brady and the Bucs here in overtime. He suffered another stinger. I don't know if it was the same kind of issue with his neck and stinger that he suffered that had him miss a week of it last week. But like Buda, you got Jalen Thompson, you got Marco Wilson, you've got we'll see what they do with Byron Murphy, who's IR'd for the remainder of the year, but showing some flashes. And then you've got guys, 2 young linebackers that you have to figure out, can they play? Are they guys that they want to sign to second contracts? But as you're right, on the defensive side of the ball, you've got young guys that can be controllable, and on the offensive side, you've got some pieces that you like as well. It is. We've gone over ad nauseum, Johnny, and it's been, I think it's reassuring to Cardinals fans that this is going to be something where if you get the right coach, you can quickly pivot from being now a last place team in the NFC West to, getting back to where you were a year removed.
And Bo, I want to pivot off that last question to what you just said next year and what the landscape is going to look like. We got a report from NBC Sports tonight that Kyler Murray is on track to have surgery with the Dallas Cowboys surgeon, the team doctor there, with his knee in the coming days, which would put him en route to probably miss the month of September with an eye to return in October of 2023. Is that best case scenario? Is that worst case scenario, somewhere in between? Or do we just have to see how Kyler is looking, let's say 6 months from now, and then make a decision?
Yeah, let's get the surgery done. That's, as you said, the report coming up January 3rd. Kliff had said he hadn't heard any of that, but that was from the sideline reporter in tonight's broadcast. So,
Jesus Christ. The head coach of this organization doesn't know what the fuck's going on with the star quarterback. I didn't hear any of that. The same bullshit you hear every week from him. God, it's so fucking annoying. So, but as far as the recovery, 9 months, right? We'll just see. You would think a guy who's going to be 26 in August, a guy who was drafted in the top 10 in 2 professional sports, Major League, in baseball and number 1 overall in football, Heisman winner, that he's probably going to have the ability to bounce back quickly. But, the NFL starts, they kick off like around 12th, 13th, 14th of September. So, we could talk about him missing 3 weeks of the season, 2 weeks of the season. So, that is probably best case scenario for the Arizona Cardinals. I wouldn't want to think that they're going to rush him back to be week 1, but, we've seen crazy. Burrow got back that quickly. But, is he going to be the guy that
that can get back to where he was, not this season, but the years before that. And that's going to come down to not only the recovery and rehab, but, who's the guy that's going to be coaching him up at that point.
Well, this team goes on the road next week to Atlanta. Then they finish the season in San Francisco. On the surface, you could be playing San Francisco's backups in Week 18. Next week, though, Saul and I are kind of on the same page. I think it's going to be hard for this team. Big emotional loss, national TV, to get up to go to Atlanta, albeit against Desmond Ridder and company, to play the Falcons. I'm not, again, we're not rooting for losses here, but I think it's foolish to expect. I think this was the Cardinals' last fastball they had in the 2022 season, where they could rev it up, play hard, and be competitive for 4 quarters against a team that I think is going to make the playoffs. What do you expect from the team the last 2 weeks of the season? And again, does it have any, I guess, prereqs on Kliff keeping his job, or Steve Keim potentially coming back, or is this coffin done?
Michael, I got news for you. Caleb's not going to be eligible to be drafted this season. But no, let me ask you this question. Did you feel like tonight's loss was ever any part of it was due to effort or lack thereof?
No, it was game management.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either. And I give credit to this team for actually showing up and playing hard, for the bulk of the season. Now you got a couple examples you could single out, like Hamilton in Mexico City and letting George Kittle making a business decision and all that. But for the most part, this is a team that has played hard, but, schematically, taken from Kyler Murray, they've been effed. But also it's just been, they get in their own way in other ways. So I think they'll be up for it, but, going across the country, taking on a kind of an Atlanta team that's hungry, technically, mathematically still in it, it just adds up to another loss to them. And I just don't see them being able to compete, especially with like Trace McSorley, or even if McCoy's back to play for that game.
It's frustrating. We got 2 games left. I want to remind everybody, go to gophnx.com, become a diehard. We got the big event coming up with our friends at Four Peaks. If you sign up to become a diehard, you get 20% off that event on January 13th. I want to remind everybody, check out the work of Howard Balzer, that he gave me a sneak preview, everybody. So this is something that you're only going to be able to see in this podcast, on this show. The lead for Howard Balzer late on Christmas night and the last night of Hanukkah, Santa Claus left town and the menorah ran out of oil. The only question is, how much time does Kliff Kingsbury have left? How about that for a banger of an article you can only get from our very own Howard Balzer? Smash the promo code Howard, HOWARD, at gophnx.com. Want to thank our friends at Burrito Express for hooking up the office this past week with those sweet, sweet burritos. We love our friends at Burrito Express. Thank you so much. I want to thank the GM, Saul Bookman. He hopped on this. He's got double duty. He's got Suns postgame in about 10 minutes. 4th quarter, a nail biter. Jump over there. We got PHNX programming on the reg. Bo, live at State Farm Stadium. Bo and I and Damian Anderson are back mañana. Tomorrow, we'll hear from Kliff and company. Johnny Venerable, thank you guys so much. Like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcast. 2 weeks out from NFL Black Monday. What will it hold for the Redbirds and company? Find out soon. Take care, everybody. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.